Welcome to the debate from GiltEdge.uk. Before we begin, this content is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Always do your own research and consider seeking independent financial advice before making any investment decisions. Your capital is at risk. Today, the Challenger and the Guardian go head-to-head on Gilts at 5% make your savings account look embarrassing. Lock in before the window closes. Let's get into it.
A 10-year gilt is paying 4.94% right now, the highest since July 2008. Your best easy access savings account. About 4.55%, and your bank can cut that tomorrow with a polite email.
That yield exists because the bond market is screaming that risk is rising. Every basis point reflects expectations of more Bank of England rate rises and stubborn inflation from the Iran energy shock.
Risk. These are UK government gilts, the closest thing to a risk-free asset that exists in sterling.
Credit risk, sure. But duration risk is a completely different beast. If rates rise another 100 basis points, a 10-year gilt loses roughly 8% of its market value overnight.
Only if you sell. Hold to maturity and you get every penny back plus that 4.94% coupon, guaranteed. Your savings account guarantees you nothing beyond today's rate.
For more rate rises are already priced into the curve. If the Bank of England delivers even one more than expected, you're sitting on a paper loss that could take years to recover.
But that argument cuts both ways. If rates fall, which they eventually will, gilt holders get a capital gain on top of the coupon. Savings account holders get nothing but a lower rate.
Eventually is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Meanwhile, your capital is locked up and losing real value if inflation stays above 5%.
The inflation argument actually favors gilts here. If inflation stays high, rates stay high, and your savings rate looks fine, but the moment inflation drops, the bank cuts rates, your savings rate collapses, and the gilt holder is sitting pretty with a locked-in yield.
Fair point on the rate lock, but you're ignoring the tax angle entirely. The first £1,000 of savings interest is tax-free for basic rate taxpayers under the personal savings allowance. Gilt coupons don't get that.
Actually, gilt capital gains are completely tax-free. So if you buy a low-coupon gilt below par, a huge chunk of your return comes as a tax-free capital gain. That's a massive advantage the savings lobby never mentions.
That works for specific low-coupon gilts, I'll grant you that. But most people looking at that 4.94% headline yield are buying at or near par, where the return is almost entirely taxable coupon.
Sure, but even on a like-for-like taxable basis, 4.94% beats 4.55%. That's nearly 40 basis points of extra return, locked in for a decade.
Locked in is the problem. What if you need that money in 2 years? You're selling into whatever the market gives you. A savings account lets you walk away tomorrow with your full balance.
The gilt market is one of the most liquid markets on earth. You can sell a UK government bond in seconds during market hours. This isn't some illiquid property fund.
Liquid doesn't mean you get your money back. Liquid means you can sell quickly, potentially at a significant loss. That's a crucial distinction.
And a savings account means you get your nominal money back while inflation eats it alive and your rate gets cut every time the MPC meets. At least with a gilt, your income stream is certain.
Let's talk about FSCS protection. Your savings account is protected up to £85,000 per institution. Gilts technically don't need that because the government backs them directly, but the operational risk of holding them through a broker adds a layer most retail investors don't think about.
Gilts are held in your name at the DMO if you buy through a nominee account or directly. The broker going bust doesn't touch your bonds. That's actually more secure than relying on FSCS limits.
For sophisticated investors, maybe. But the average person with £30,000 in savings doesn't want to navigate the gilt market, worry about settlement dates, and figure out clean versus dirty prices.
You can buy gilts through any stockbroker in about 3 clicks now. AJ Bell, Hargreaves Lansdown, Interactive Investor, it's no harder than buying a share. The complexity argument is 10 years out of date.
Except those platforms charge dealing fees and custody fees that eat into your return. A savings account costs you literally nothing.
A few pounds in dealing fees versus 40 basis points of extra yield on a £30,000 holding, that's £120 a year more in your pocket, guaranteed for the life of the bond. The fees are noise.
Guaranteed only if you hold to maturity. And that brings us full circle. You're locking up your money for a decade to earn an extra £120 a year while taking on meaningful interest rate risk.
You don't have to go 10 years. The 2-year gilt yields over 4.5% as well, and your duration risk on a 2-year bond is minimal. Match the term to your time horizon.
At 2 years, the yield advantage over savings accounts almost disappears. The case for gilts really only gets compelling at longer durations, which is exactly where the risk sits.
And that's exactly the point. The market is paying you to take duration. If you have money you won't need for 5 or 10 years, why would you leave it in a variable rate account that's guaranteed to disappoint you the moment rates fall?
Because rates might not fall for a long time. The market priced in 6 rate cuts last year and got 2. Forecasting the rate path is a mug's game.
Which is precisely why locking in nearly 5% for a decade is the rational move. You're removing the forecasting risk entirely.
Look, gilts have a place for people with long-time horizons, specific tax situations, and genuine certainty they won't need the cash. But for the vast majority of savers, the simplicity, flexibility, and protection of a savings account is the smarter default.
The window on 5% gilts won't stay open forever. The last time yields were this high was 2008. And they didn't come back for 17 years. Lock in now or regret it when your savings rate is back at 1%.
And the last time people rushed into long bonds at peak yields, they watched their capital evaporate for years. Protect your downside first. You can always buy gilts later if the case strengthens.
The Challenger, The Guardian, thank you both. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Read both articles in full at gilt-edge.uk. Thanks for listening to the debate.